Okay, folks, welcome back to the channel. So what we're going to do is I'm going to do a bat rep here. I will speed through things as I can, but I'm going to break in with some commentary when it's appropriate. This was a really tight game. It was a lot of fun. First game I've gotten in a long time due to the pandemic. So hopefully you'll watch it through. It's a really fun game. So in a couple minutes, we do go through our lists with each other, so I will not go through the lists with you. I will turn on the audio for the live stream so that you can see that. We're finishing setup and we're just getting ready to place our obstacles. The Super Star Destroyer list had the bid on this and they chose to go second. I'm playing a Starhawk list and I chose Station Assault out of his um, objectives. For Station Assault, what we do is the second player gets to place two stations. So we add a station, and the second player gets to place both of them. The first player, which is me, cannot heal on the station, so there is a detriment there. And my opponent can heal on both stations, so they have another option to heal. Both of the stations have 10 health though, and I can shoot at them. So for every station I destroy, I get 40 points at the end of the game. For every station still on the board at the end of the game, my opponent gets an extra 40 points. When you're placing obstacles, we alternate second player, first player. And my goal here is to limit his options with the stations a little bit as much as I can. And we'll now get to our lists. So I've got one comms net with Leia on it.
Okay.
I've got another repair cruise that's Bright Hope. And then I've got Krista Gate Unity title, which gives me an extra redirect defense token. And also, while attacking a squadron, if the defender is engaged with a friendly squadron without the printed heavy keyword, I can reroll a die. I do have the tractor beam on it, so I can slow you up and I can have you match my speed, basically. I have Wedge Antilles on here. First time I've ever played Wedge. So at the end of the Squadron Phase, I can spend a Squadron token to choose up to 3 friendly, non-unique squadrons without strategic.
And you get cloak.
At distance 1 to 5, and they get cloak. Damage control officer. Quad battery turrets. Weapons battery techs. Heavy ions.
I've got Admiral Thrawn, Commander Vanto, Wolf Yularen, Emperor Palpatine, gunnery teams, take evasive action, high capacity ion turbines, and link turbo laser towers, and my SSD is Ravager.
Which is Ravager.
Your concentrate fire tokens can either reroll or add a die. And then 2 Gazantes with repair crews, one of them is Hondo.
I've got Krista Gate, who's giving me a brace token.
Yep.
And she also lets me discard a token regardless whether you accuracy it or not in order to use its effect. And I have Rogue Squadron Dash and 6 YT 2400s.
Oh, I got 4 cannon fodders.
This is play 'em if you got 'em.
Yep. I hate those things. Alright.
Okay, so now we're getting into deployment, and as first player I place first, and I'm just going to place one of my flotillas right in the middle of the board. My comms in that flotilla so that I give him as little information as I possibly can, set it at speed 1. Flotillas don't want to jump into the front of a Superstar Destroyer too fast because Superstar Destroyers delete flotillas really fast. He's also placing a Gazanti middle of the board, not giving me too much information. And then I'm going to proceed by surrounding my flotilla with my squadrons in order to delay deployment of my command ship so that I can see, because I do have a couple more deployments thanks to my squadrons than my opponent. So I'm going to wait them out so that I can see where the Superstar Destroyer gets placed. And he's doing the same thing, placing some squadrons. Now, once he places the Superstar Destroyer here, he's pointed off to the side a little bit and not towards the stations. And I know that he's going to be turning into the station. He does have a fleet command that lets him have an extra yaw, plus if he has a nav command, which I assume he will, he'll be able to get 2 clicks on his movement tool. And for a Superstar Destroyer, a couple of clicks is going to really swing it around. So when I get to the point where I'm placing my Starhawk, I probably made a little bit of a mistake here in that I placed it off to the side. What I should have done was placed it in front of the Superstar Destroyer, because I was going to face the front of the Superstar Destroyer either way because of the turn. And what I should have done is placed it in front, because then he would have had to either come at me and avoided the stations altogether so that he wouldn't be able to heal on them. His goal is to stay on a station and just slowly inch up on it so that he can heal a damage every turn. I could have prevented him from doing that by placing it on the side of the board that I did. I let him turn into me and get on a station. So that was a little bit of a mistake on my part. And we'll be getting into turn 1. So this is turn 1. Turn 1 we're going to speed through pretty quick because, as what's usual in most Armada games, is turn 1 there's usually very little, if any, shooting. Now we did end up having some shooting during the Squadron Phase with my rogues, but most of this went as expected. I do think in retrospect I made one mistake, because I knew that the Superstar Destroyer was going to turn in, which it did. My GR75 with Leia and comms net, I probably should have just backed it down to speed 0 and left it where it is to keep it out of range. As it is, I moved it up speed 1, which is going to give the Superstar Destroyer a long range shot on it, because it has gunnery teams. It can take its shots from the front, and not good for a flotilla. Now, it is a long range shot that he'll take in the second round, which we'll talk about when that happens. But otherwise, mostly just jockeying things around, pushing things up, and him turning his Superstar Destroyer into me as I expected, and which put him on the station, which is going to let him heal throughout the game, which is why I probably should have deployed the Starhawk on the other side of the board. But that's it. We'll speed through this relatively quickly. I think I probably got 3 or 4 damage on him on the Superstar Destroyer from the squadrons, but that was probably about it for this round. Round 2. Round 2 there's going to be a bit more action, and you'll see here, we're going to go relatively fast through this one as well. But the Superstar Destroyer, because of the pass token and the fact that it's going second, can hold off until all of my activations are done, which he does. So I end up moving Leia again, which was just bad, just putting it right in that arc. The Starhawk ended up taking a long range shot as well. The other GR75 was okay. He flaked out at all of my squadrons, and I think they all took at least 1 hit. When he shoots at the Leia GR-75, he does kill it. He gets exactly what he needs. He he rolled 5 plus a scatter plus a accuracy, so he accuracyed my scatter. I had an evade, but 4 is gonna kill a GR-75 every time. So that was unfortunate. It was unfortunate for several reasons for me, because I'm losing an activation. I'm losing Leia because Leia lets me fix a dial on the Starhawk if I need to change something late in the game. And I'm losing the comms net in order to keep things like engineering tokens going. On the plus side, the Starhawk, I had preset all of my later dials to engineering, so I was okay. And for that reason, and because the Starhawk is the only ship that I have that counts towards tabling, I probably just need to do engineering anyways, and Leia should probably get wiped from the list and pick something else, because I don't think I'll really need her. The biggest thing was I lost that activation, so now he's going to be able to wait me out every single time. And then at the end of the round, all of my squadrons went, and when my squadrons activated, I was able to take out a couple of TIE fighters, and I tried to spread my fighters out around the Super Star Destroyer a bit so that he wouldn't be able to get them all in the same flak shot again. So, spread them out to at least 3 different hull zones and not on the same side as the Gazantes, which would give him extra flak, so on the opposite side of the ship. In that way, going forward, it would limit the number of shots. Now, he still has a couple of TIE fighters left. I plan on taking them out in the next round, which I believe I do. And the Starhawk and the Super Star Destroyer are going to end up pretty much face to face here at the end of this round. On the plus side, the Starhawk has a double arc going into round 3 on the Super Star Destroyer, where the Super Star Destroyer only has its front arc, which is a huge arc, but it has its front arc on the Starhawk. So that's something that's going to come into play a little bit later in round 3, and we'll talk about that then. So round three, we're going to have a bit more action. It's usually in Armado when action starts picking up. And from here on out, I'm probably going to be activating the Starhawk first. So the interesting thing about my activation of the Starhawk this time is I needed to decide what I wanted to do. I could move up alongside the Super Star Destroyer, but the problem with that is I would be putting myself in a double arc with the front and the side, and I decided, because of Kiersted Gate's ability, which lets me discard a defense token, whether it's accuracy or not, to just stay in the front, because then I would be guaranteed to be able to brace for a couple of turns, even if it gets accuracy, and kind of just hang out in the front. So I had a double arc on him, so I'm actually rolling a couple more dice than he is at me. So I decided to take my couple of shots, did a little bit of damage, not a ton. Then I bumped him and stayed in his front arc. Then with his activation, he decided for the Super Star Destroyer, he decided to also bump me and stay where he was at, which turned out to be okay with me, because I was able to just keep that single arc, big arc, but keep the single arc and not worry about it too much. Now, his Gazantes, I'm not exactly sure what his thought process was here, but they're both running into the side of the Super Star Destroyer, so they're both going to end up bumping the Super Star Destroyer and taking hull damage. I mean, it's one way to make sure repair crews stay within range, but eventually you're going to work through the hull on your Gazantes. After the ships go, we get into the squadron phase, and I was able to eliminate his last couple of TIE fighters. So we dealt with that. And then all of my YT-2400s went on a bombing run, again trying to spread themselves out a little bit along the far side of the Super Star Destroyer to keep them away from the flak of the Gazantes. I still haven't done anything with the stations yet. By the end of this turn, I do have the one station that's near double arced with the Starhawk, so I could one-shot it if I wanted to. We'll have to wait and see how that goes. But this was a pretty significant round. I didn't expect in round 3 to be discarding a brace in order to use the gate's ability, but I think in the end it was the right decision to make. I saved quite a bit of damage, kept the crit from getting to hull, and eventually I do start moving around the Super Star Destroyer, but not yet. I wanted to hold off a little bit. So we'll speed through this round and get to round 4. Well, we're into turn 4 now. And turn 4, I decided to take a little bit different approach. I decided that instead of shooting at the Super Star Destroyer, I was going to take out one of the Gazantes with the front of the Starhawk, which I did. I actually would have liked to have had all the damage that I got onto the Gazante onto the Super Star Destroyer, even though the Super Star Destroyer would have braced it. But it eliminated one Gazante right away, and both of his Gazantes both have repair crews, so they're just helping keep this Super Star Destroyer alive. So eliminated one of them right away. Then I took the side shot from the Starhawk into the front of the Super Star Destroyer and proceeded to bump the Super Star Destroyer again in order to keep myself single arced in its front. I still had a brace token that I could use with a gate if I had to. I also was, I didn't have that much damage on me at this point. I think I only had 2 or 3 damage on me, it looks like, from what I can see on the screen. I think it looks like two damage on me, so I had plenty of hull in order to be able to survive that shot a couple of times. And it's turn 4, so there's only a couple more rounds going. After that, he decided to go with his Super Star Destroyer. His Super Star Destroyer did do a fair amount of damage. I did end up using a gate. I kept the brace, but I did use a gate to discard a redirect in order to put almost all damage to shields. I did take 2 damage, including a crit. The crit wasn't too bad because it just told me I couldn't refresh exhausted defense tokens, which is fine because then my GR75 with repair crews took that right off right after the Super Star Destroyer went, so it really was no effect to me. And then my squadrons, all of my my YT-2400s, then went after, instead of going after the Super Star Destroyer, went after the other Gazanti, and they were able to kill it, which was good. Not sure if that was the right approach or not. I mean, I could have put a lot more damage to the hull of the Super Star Destroyer, but it was just getting to the point I'd put damage on him and he'd take it off. I'd put damage on him, he'd take it off. I needed to get his healing down. So now all he has is the station. He did do a forward move. He went just straight forward 1. He was able to pull up alongside the Starhawk. He might have wanted to do that last turn, but because now I'm double arced with his front and his side, so it's going to force me to probably have to consider moving in round 5. I feel like I'm in a decent position here because I haven't taken a ton of damage, although I'm feeling it on my defense tokens. They're a little bit weak, and at this point I'm also not very close to getting half hull on the Super Star Destroyer. So we're going to speed through again this round. Hopefully I'm explaining enough of it to you. Um, and we'll see how round 5 goes. And we're into turn 6. Turn 6, so there's less to move around on the board, but the two big ships are really firing each other at this point. One interesting thing that I did with the Starhawk at this point is I had an engineering command. So with an engineering command, you can either move a shield for a point, you can regenerate a shield for 2, or you can take off a damage card for 3. I decided here, because the only thing that's getting shot at this point is going to be my side arc, because after I do my shooting, I'm going to move and make sure that all that he has to shoot at is my side arc. So I'm actually going to regen 1 shield here to that side, and the only other shields I had on the ship were 2 on the opposite side, which weren't going to get touched, so I moved both of those over to that side as well, just to get as much defense in that side as I possibly could. Now, one thing that I did do here, that one thing I tell people all the time is, the lists that you can make that you forget the least about is the list that you want to run. The more, because you're getting the most efficiency out of your list. In this round, my first shot, I forgot to use my high intensity ions. So I could have basically deleted the 2 shields that were left on either side of the front, and all the damage would have gone to hull. I forgot to do it, so he was able to redirect 1 to 1 shield. The other shield stayed there. So that was unfortunate. Um, But the other thing that was interesting is that when I moved, I landed on the station, and my opponent was insisting that I could heal a damage, which I had to tell him because of the objective we were playing, his objective, station assault. I couldn't, and he realized that I couldn't, and I think we had gone through that discussion a couple times in this one match. I did use Kirsta again to burn the final brace in order to keep my damage as low as I possibly could. And the squadrons in the Squadron Phase, they were able to eliminate all of the rest of the shields on the Super Star Destroyer, and were able to put a few more damage to hull. By the end of the round, the Super Star Destroyer, I believe, was at 10 damage, so 1 away from half damage, and the Starhawk was at half damage. It had 7 out of 14. So fortunately the Starhawk's going to go first in the 6th round, and we'll talk about that then. I also have to decide if I'm going to do anything about the stations at this point, or if I'm just going to keep trying to hit on the Super Star Destroyer, which still has 12 damage left, but only needs 1 more to get to half damage, although I'm sure my opponent has some engineering coming for the next round. So we'll finish watching this round, and we'll get to the end and to turn 6, and we'll wrap it up. Alright, this one's turn 6. I'm not sure how quick this part of the video will go, just because I'll do a little wrap up at the end. But in this round, first, to explain why the Starhawk is lying on its side, the models of the Super Star Destroyer and the Starhawk were bumping. That doesn't mean anything for the game. The only thing that means anything is the base. So whenever that happens, and it's only a couple of big ships that it occasionally happens with, although the Super Star Destroyer is a big offender of it, you take one of the ships off the base and just lay it down until it clears the other ship. So in this round, I didn't have my front arc on the Superstar Destroyer. He had just gotten out of my front arc. So what I decided to do, I decided to take a side shot into the Superstar Destroyer, do as much damage as I could, and then I could have taken a rear arc shot into the Superstar Destroyer, but I decided instead, because I was really close. I was at that point I was at 12 damage on him. I knew he was going to heal some, but I also had my squadrons coming. So instead of taking that rear shot, I decided to take the front shot on the station and put 8 damage onto the station. And then I swung around his rear. I did still end up double arced with his auxiliary side and his rear, but I only exposed my one side to both arcs, which I was able to get 2 shields on, which helped a little bit. Uh, the first shot that he put on me only took a couple of damage, but because I was able to take 2 to shield, I used Krista to burn my contain so I wouldn't take a crit. And then he just had the rear arc shot, which he needed a perfect roll. He needed to get 4 more damage on me at that point. He rolled 3. He took a reroll hoping for double. Still ended up with 3, but he had a critical in there, and I had burned my contain. So the critical ended up being very relevant in the game. If I had gotten a structural damage, the game would have been over. My opponent would have won, and he would have tabled me. I ended up not pulling a structural. I pulled something else and ended up surviving the game. So then all I had to do, I moved Dash up into the rear arc of the Superstar Destroyer. Actually got the hit crit, so I put 2 more damage on the Superstar Destroyer. It was at half. And then I used other squadrons to finish taking out the one station. So I split the stations with them and got half points. And I ended up winning the game. And while it was a pretty substantial 200 plus point win, I can't remember exactly what it was. I think it was around 230 points or so. While the win was substantial, the actual game was extremely tight. I was 1 damage away from dying. So 1 damage was the difference in the game, really. It was going to be a 200 point game the other way if he had taken out the Starhawk. So it was a extremely tight game. I would always just remember remember everything that you have. If you can't remember everything that you have on your ships in terms of upgrades, maybe go with fewer upgrades and more ships, extra squadrons, that sort of thing. My list, it you may have heard me say during the when we were reading off the lists that with my squadrons I had Dash Rendar, which is the unique YT-2400 plus 6 other generic YT-2400s. Because you only get 1 in a pack in Rogues and Villains, it's a very odd thing, and as I said during the video, it was a play 'em if you got 'em type of a list. Most people aren't going to have that many, but I've got 'em, so I played 'em. And they're extremely powerful. They're speed 4 rogue. I don't have to worry about activating them. Speed 4 black anti-ship dice. Dash is a bomber. The others are not, but black anti-ship is really good on non-bombers. And they were able to do a lot of work. He was only able to take out 2 of my squads. The YT-2400s have 6 hulls, so they're pretty beefy. And overall, there are a couple of changes that I think I would make to my list. I would not leave Wedge on there. I would take him off and replace him with something else. Damage Control Officer I didn't use in this game, but I do think it's relevant. So I probably would keep Damage Control Officer. And then on the GR75, I would probably take Leia off and replace her with something else. Or just take the points as part of a bid Wedge I would probably replace. I might replace Wedge with Strategic Advisor to get an extra activation. Although with the new Clone Wars coming out, we don't know what the additional pass token mechanic is going to be, so maybe I wouldn't even need to take Strategic Advisor unless I wanted even an additional uh, pass beyond whatever passes we're going to get. But thank you very much. Please like and subscribe. I don't know how often I'll be able to get games in with the pandemic. We're being really careful about what we're doing and how often we try and get together. But like and subscribe. I will get up battle reports as often as possible, and I'll keep going with as much Armada content as I can possibly come up with before the release of the Clone Wars. If you have any questions or have any ideas for videos that you would like to see between now and when Clone Wars comes out, please put those in the comments. We'll see you next time. Keep armadaing. Thank you very much.